So our next presentation will be from Michelle Anderson, class of 2018. And it's titled Pedaling into the History Books, the City of Davis Bicycle Lanes. Michelle received her Bachelor of Arts degree in History and Communication from Tulane University in New Orleans in 2014. After serving as an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer in Havre, Montana, she moved to Ithaca in August 2016 to begin her graduate studies in historic preservation planning here at Cornell. Michelle graduated in 2018 and relocated to California, where she now works as an architectural historian for Michael Baker International. Prior to that, though, she worked as an architectural historian at JRP Historical Consulting. And Michelle served for 3 years as a commissioner on the City of Davis Historical Resources Management Commission, and presently serves as HPPA treasurer and chair of the HPPA Symposium Planning Committee. So her presentation today will tell us about the City of Davis, which is situated in California's Central Valley, just west of Sacramento. It's a university town with a unique history linked to the development of bicycle transportation and infrastructure. The first bicycle lanes in Davis were opened to the public in 1967 along 3rd Street, 8th Street, and Sycamore Lane. Not only were these first dedicated bike lanes in Davis, but also the first in California and in the United States. No formal infrastructure existed to support bicycle riders on streets with vehicular traffic prior to these first bicycle lanes. Their development required amendment of the California Vehicle Code, and their design served as a prominent prototype as other cities across the country developed their own bicycle lanes in the years following. In 2021, 4 original bicycle lanes, all of which are extant and in current use, were designated as a multiple component local landmark by the Davis City Council. The City of Davis Historical Resources Management Commission is in the process of nominating the bicycle lanes to the National Register of Historic Places. So without anything further, I'll hand it over to Michelle.
All right, thank you, Zoe. Let me share my screen. So as Zoe explained, today I will be talking a little bit about our nation's first official bicycle lanes, which were established in the city of Davis, California in 1967. I had the opportunity to become involved in the documentation of this unique resource while I was serving as commissioner on the City of Davis Historical Resources Management Commission from 2019 onward. My husband and I actually just moved outside of Davis to a nearby small town called Winters. And since I am no longer a Davis resident, I had to step away from my position on the HRMC this spring. However, this is an ongoing effort, and I am very grateful that the members of the commission trusted me with presenting this history today. This presentation is the result of years of hard work and dedication supplied by numerous Davis residents. I would first like to acknowledge Theodore Buehler. His 2007 master's thesis, 50 Years of Bicycle Policy in Davis, California, has been instrumental as a reference document for subsequent study efforts. I would also like to recognize former HRMC Chair Rand Herbert and Matthew Walker, who prepared the first recordation of Davis's 4 original bicycle lanes in 2015. Next, Scott Miltenberger and David Hickman, who are both current members of the HRMC. Not only did I get to work with these two on the 2020 bicycle lanes survey update and designation effort, but they were also co-workers of mine for just over 3 years while I was at JRP Historical Consulting from 2018 until October of last year. And of course, I would also like to thank all of the other past and present members of the HRMC who have supported this work, as well as planner Ike Njoku, who is the HRMC's city staff liaison. So although the City of Davis bicycle lanes were the first dedicated bicycle lanes on streets with vehicular traffic in the United States, there were at least a few important precursors that are worth mentioning. Bicycle ridership among American adults in general has fluctuated quite a bit since the late 19th century. The first wave of popularity spanned from about 1880, which more or less coincides with the invention of the penny farthing or high wheel bicycle, until the widespread adoption of automobiles in the 1920s. Many of these early cyclists, as you can imagine, were advocates for transportation improvements. In particular, the League of American Wheelmen campaigned with the slogan of "Good roads for bicycles" to pressure cities into posting street name signs at intersections and to provide lighting at night. Around the turn of the 20th century, several California cities, particularly in Southern California, invested in dedicated bicycle paths that offered smooth and safe riding surfaces. The Santa Monica cycle path in 1900, for example, extended 18 miles from the coast to the Los Angeles city limits, and that is pictured there at the bottom of the screen. The city of Pasadena planned for an elevated bicycle way, which is at the top picture shown here. That path was intended to provide a link to downtown Los Angeles. However, only a small portion was completed and the route was later repurposed as part of the Pasadena Freeway. In the 1920s, the coming of the automobile largely displaced bicycling as a means of transportation, and bicycles principally came to be thought of as a toy for children, best suited for riding to school or around the neighborhood. The rationing of fuel and rubber during World War II led to a brief resurgence, but it soon faltered in the automobile-centric post-war years. Then, during the 1960s, modern 10-speed bicycles became commercially available, and adults rediscovered bicycling for recreation, and many took to commuting by bicycle as a part of an environmentally conscious lifestyle. Cycling's mid-century revival, however, occurred within a very different transportation context compared against that of the early 20th century. By this time, cars dominated our nation's paved roads, and no system yet existed for designating bike lanes or routes, and thus bicyclists made use of roads at their own risk. In 1961, not long before the city of Davis began to consider their own bicycle infrastructure, the city of Homestead, Florida, unveiled a series of what they called bikeways that connected residential areas, schools, and their downtown shopping district. These routes were assigned to lesser used secondary roads and were marked with large signs bearing the inscription "Safety Bicycle Route." Drivers were encouraged to avoid these streets, but if they had to use them, that they should drive slowly and observantly so as to prioritize cyclists. However, the designation of these bikeways did not involve any bicycle lane striping to reserve a portion of the roadway for bicycles, and no changes in state or local regulations were required to accommodate their creation. The Homestead bikeways attracted considerable public attention and led to other areas developing their own bike routes. Often, these routes were separate bike paths that were parallel to or entirely removed from vehicular roads. The routes served recreational purposes, but did not offer day-to-day transportation like a feasible transportation alternative for most users. Now, to set the stage as to why Davis, of all places, became the epicenter of bicycle infrastructure development during the 1960s. So to understand the history of Davis, we need to take it back a century to the 1860s, when the California Pacific Railroad purchased a large portion of the local ranch owned by Jerome Davis and his wife, Mary Childs. That is what put Davisville, as it was originally named, on the map, so to speak. The decision to place a triangular junction and station where the present-day railroad station is now located established Davisville as an important center of agricultural commerce and trade in Yolo County. Early industries centered around the cultivation and processing of wheat, tree nuts, and various stone fruits. Many of the local streets remained unpaved until the incorporation of the city of Davis in 1917. And incorporation was a major step towards developing the political and administrative mechanisms to initiate important public works, especially road improvements. In 1908, the University of California opened its farm school in Davis. Davis was selected for its central location and the abundance of suitable agricultural land in the area. Early students frequently rode bicycles as an economical means of transportation that was well suited for the sprawling rural campus. Because Davis was a small town without heavily trafficked roads at the time, bicyclists were easily accommodated without specialized infrastructure. In 1959, the University of California promoted the Davis campus from a satellite of UC Berkeley to an independent institution. As a result, UC Davis experienced a dramatic enrollment spike, and the broader Davis community swelled in population. Chancellor Emil Mrak, who oversaw the physical expansion of the school, directed the architects to plan for a bicycle riding, tree-lined campus. When the university adopted its first long-range development plan in 1963, the document called for wide, high-speed bicycle thoroughfares, and the network of paths would link to downtown at 3rd Street, connecting the campus to the city. This here is a closer look at the 1963 circulation plan for the UC Davis campus. And as you can see, the yellow dashed lines were areas planned for bicycle corridors. Until this point, bicycles and cars had shared Davis roads without much difficulty, but with the growing university population and increasing traffic, things were about to change. By 1964, there were over 7,000 registered bicycle riders, while the total city population totaled just 10,000 people, giving Davis the highest per capita rate of bicycle use in the country at the time. At the request of its residents, the city began to look for ways to make bicycle transportation safer. In 1964, the City Council adopted an updated general plan that called for a street design that would minimize conflict between various street uses. However, no action was taken on the proposal. This inaction only served to bolster the resolve of local bicycle infrastructure advocates. In the fall of 1964, UC Davis economics professor Frank Child wrote a letter to the Davis Enterprise that galvanized public support. Having recently returned from the Netherlands, Child noted that many of the streets he encountered were designed with bicycle lanes to safely support large volumes of bicycle travel. Following the publication of his letter, Child formed the Citizens Bicycle Safety Group to increase pressure on the City Council. The group presented a petition in favor of the creation of bicycle lanes, and the council subsequently allocated a small budget for the Traffic Commission to conduct a study. In 1965, City Council issued a plan supporting bicycle lanes, but only in areas surrounding elementary schools. The matter of bicycle lanes became one of the main topics of the 1966 council election. Voters elected Norman Woodbury and Maynard Skinner, both of whom were pro-bicycle lane candidates, to fill the 2 vacancies on the council. In July 1966, just a few months after the election, the council members voted to study potential bicycle lanes on 3rd Street, Sycamore Lane, Russell Boulevard, and other streets across the city. City Council approved its first bicycle lane plan on February 13th, 1967, followed by adoption of ordinance number 442 for the creation of the bicycle lanes and their regulation on June 12, 1967. This ordinance made bicycle lanes legal at the city level and outlined the traffic laws that governed them. The lanes were to be marked by simple painted lines. While Davis moved toward establishing bicycle lanes on its streets, the project was not yet legal under the California Vehicle Code. Councilman Woodbury had close connections with lobbyists in Sacramento who were willing to advocate for a legislative change, though. In May 1967, the California Senate Committee on Transportation drafted Senate Bill 1299 that allowed local authorities to establish and regulate bike lanes on city streets. The Davis-inspired bill was enacted in July of that year, providing the nation's first legal framework for regulating separate automobile and bicycle traffic lanes on shared streets. The city opened its first bicycle lane along West 8th Street from Sycamore Lane to A Street in July 1967. In the following months, bicycle lanes opened along Sycamore between 8th Street and Russell Boulevard, 3rd Street between B Street and K Street, and then along J Street between 3rd Street and 8th Street. These bicycle lanes were not only the first in the city, but the first designated bicycle lanes in the nation that called for organized road sharing between bicyclists and automobile traffic. The southernmost portion of the Sycamore bike lane from Russell Boulevard to Wake Forest Drive featured an experimental design with the bicycle lane paralleling the curb and the parking lane positioned adjacent to the primary traffic lane, as you can see here, with the cars parked adjacent to the main lane of travel there. The standard arrangement that the city ultimately adopted and is still in use today was the model implemented on the northern stretch of Sycamore, as well as along 8th Street, 3rd Street, and J Street, where the parking was closer to the curb and the bike lane was sort of positioned between the parking lane and the automobile lane. This photo here was taken in 1967 facing 3rd Street. In November 1967, UC Davis decided to close its central campus to car traffic to allow for safer bicycle and pedestrian travel. This further encouraged students to ride bicycles and fueled an increase in use of the new city bicycle lanes. Davis continued to develop its bicycle infrastructure through the present day. In 1969, Davis opened its first green belts in North and West Davis, near the city's newest residential subdivisions. These wide concrete paths were situated within park areas and allowed for travel without any interaction with automobiles. The system of bicycle lanes on then existing roads was nearly complete by 1972, when nearly all major streets in the city had a designed bicycle lane. By the early 1970s, the design and implementation of Davis's bicycle lanes had begun to influence other cities in California and throughout the United States. In 1971, the California legislature called for the Department of Public Works to investigate the most feasible methods for adapting existing and planned roads to safely accommodate bicycle riders. The department in turn commissioned the Institute of Transportation and Traffic Engineering at UCLA to undertake a thorough study of the issue. 6 UC Davis professors and 8 graduate students were invited to join the team as well. The group conducted most of their research in Davis by observing the various bikeway designs in the city. The resulting report, Bike Planning Criteria and Guidelines, was issued in April 1972 and subsequently reissued by the Federal Highway Administration as a national guidebook. And just to give you a sense of the scope of Davis's bicycle lanes by the mid-1970s and just how popular they were as a model for other cities, here is a brief clip of a promotional film produced in 1974 by the Huffman Corporation.
This is Davis, California, a pleasant town where an important breakthrough has been made in the quality of American city life. This was the first American city to recognize the need of its citizens to use bicycles in their regular daily transportation and to provide them a safe and well-planned system of bicycle thoroughfares within the city. Davis was the first to provide a comprehensive and effective citywide system of bikeways to help its people enjoy a better way of living. Leaving the freeway and entering Davis, the motorist sees a large sign telling him that this California city has 18,000 bicycles. Considering that its population is only 24,000, probably no other city in the United States has as high a proportion of its citizens owning bicycles and using them as a regular means of transportation. When the number of bicycles in Davis first began to grow dramatically, it became clear that something had to be done in traffic planning to afford safety to the cyclists and to maintain convenience for motorists and cyclists alike. What was needed was some way to separate bicycles from automobiles, and the plan adopted included several elements. Bicycle paths completely separate from streets and roads. Bicycle lanes designated on existing streets. And bicycle routes, a selection of streets and roads to be shared by bicycles and cars. Bike riding facilities became the central issue in a city election of 1966, and the pro-bikeway candidates won. Soon after that, the first bike lanes were established along the sides of existing wide streets. Since that time, Davis has been developing a bicycle transportation network that is probably unique in the United States. New housing tracts in the city are required to set aside space for bicycle paths separated from traffic. And a special act was passed by the California Assembly to enable the city to formulate traffic regulations for bicycles. It is important to realize that the bicycles are not merely used for recreational purposes. They are an important part of the transportation system. On one heavily trafficked street, traffic counts during the summer with few university students in town show that bicycles represented 40% of all traffic. During the rush hour, 90% of all riders are adults.
Well, I like it because, well, for health reasons and because it's economical and can save on gas and wear and tear on the car.
That I myself use the bike lanes when I ride with my own family in the Davis community.
The community couldn't do without the bicycle path systems we have now. We have approximately 26,000 registered bicycles in the community. Without the bicycle lanes, the traffic congestion would be almost unbearable, particularly in the downtown areas.
I guess I basically ride it because it's enjoyable. I like getting up in the morning and going out on the bike path, and it's not the busy hassle that you have with traffic in a car.
When you have 100 to 150 bicycles traveling down one particular street at one time, along with your normal vehicular traffic, it would be almost impossible to travel to and from one place without your normal bicycle lanes, which are in all the downtown areas.
Not only has Davis improved its traffic situation, it has also changed the whole lifestyle of its people toward cleaner, healthier living. People are enjoying themselves more. They are riding economically, safely, and keeping their city freer of pollution. Transportation.
So you may be wondering, what are the current conditions of the 4 original bicycle lanes and what is being done to highlight their story? I would say that for quite some time, there has been a great deal of community support for recognizing Davis's bicycle infrastructure history, but only just recently did the bicycle lanes reach that critical age in which we could step back and really assess their broader significance. In 2015, the City of Davis conducted a citywide survey that included documentation of the 4 original bicycle lanes. Former HRMC Chair Rand Herbert and JRP Historical Consulting Research Assistant Matthew Walker recorded the bicycle lanes on a California Department of Parks and Recreation 523 form. This effort, of course, was 2 years before the 50th anniversary of the completion of the original bicycle lanes, and no formal action was taken to designate them at the local, state, or federal level at that time. In 2020, the HRMC subcommittee comprised of Chair Scott Miltenberger, Commissioner David Hickman, and myself resurveyed the bicycle lanes and conducted additional research. We ultimately determined that the original bicycle lanes planned and opened in 1967 were eligible for listing as a multiple component local landmark, and that they were also eligible for the National Register of Historic Places under criteria A and C. The bike lanes are significant under criterion A for being the first of their kind in the United States, for their impact on transportation law at the state and local level, for their role in the national effort to integrate bicycles into transportation planning, and for their influence as a prototype for other cities across the country. Under criterion C, they are significant because they embody the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction. Although the design principally consisted of a simple painted stripe separating cars from bicycles, this marked an important shift in American transportation design. Their character-defining features are their location, dimensions, striping, and orientation between the traveled motorway and parking strip. Though the roads have been repaved and the bike lanes have been repainted over the years, they have retained integrity of design, materials, workmanship, location, setting, feeling, and association, and are just as much in use today as they were in 1967. At the time of the most recent survey, we also prepared a draft National Register nomination for the bicycle lanes. So what do the bicycle lanes look like today? In short, although some changes have been made, mostly with regard to painted and posted signage, the bike lanes in their current form essentially reflect the same configuration that was adopted in 1967. As you saw on the aerial view, the 4 bike lanes are located on existing asphalt paved roads in central Davis and are defined by a distinct bicycle lane set between a curbside parking lane and an inner automobile lane. The lanes are generally 7 feet wide and are outlined with approximately 4-inch wide strips of white paint. The total distance from the curb to the inner painted strip separating the bike lane from vehicle traffic is 15 feet. Other characteristic painted features include dashed dividing lines approaching intersections, directional markings, and identifying textual and graphic signage on the road surface. The stencil markings that identify the bike lanes have evolved from the original bikes only wording to modern silhouette depictions of bicycles or simplified terminology such as bike lane, which is shown in that top photo there. I believe these are, these are photographs of each or 3 of the original bicycle lanes. And this one at the bottom here is on 8th Street, and that was the original, the first of the 4 that were established in 1967. Following the completion of the 2020 survey, the HRMC made a recommendation to City Council to designate the bicycle lanes at the local level. On April 21st, 2021, City Council unanimously voted to designate the 4 original bicycle lanes as a multiple component landmark. At the same time, they also unanimously approved resolution number 2150 to express their support for the National Register nomination. And of course, this was in the midst of the pandemic, so the meeting was held over Zoom, but that is Mayor Gloria Partida right there introducing our agenda item. As I mentioned, one of the primary areas of focus for the HRMC at the moment is the ongoing National Register nomination effort. And the special subcommittee has been in talks with their contact at the California SHPO to ensure that the nomination form is addressing all of the necessary factors. Other recent developments include the recent repainting of several of the bicycle lanes at the request of the HRMC. Maintaining the existing striping pattern, of course, and discussions on installing new commemorative signage near high traffic areas, particularly so that students, traveling to and from campus might be able to see and read about some of this history that they might not otherwise be aware of. So that concludes my presentation, and I would love to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Michelle. That was awesome. Very informative. I learned something new. So yeah, let's open it up for questions. Looks like Emily has her hand up.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Michelle. That was awesome. So 2 questions. First of all, are you yourself a cyclist? Do you cycle for work or recreation? That's just like a general question.
When I lived in Davis, I was definitely cycling quite a bit. My office was, less than 5 minutes from my apartment, so I was able to get around on bike pretty easily, pretty much everywhere. But now that we live in winters, I'm a little bit more car bound than I was before. But
okay, cool. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Where do you live now?
I live in a town called Winters, which is about 10 miles west of Davis.
Oh, okay, cool. And then the second question is, do you think that the COVID pandemic with people becoming increasingly sort of invested in outdoor life and well-being and health and not being in crowded potential public transportation type settings, do you think that at all had any sort of positive influence on the designation of these bike lanes, or do you think it would have happened regardless? Such as a happy coincidence, kind of, or a sad coincidence, I should say.
I sort of think that it would have happened regardless. I think that, like, as I said, there's been a fair amount of public support for designating them since the initial study in 2015. However, I definitely do think that the bike lanes in Davis were getting much more use during the pandemic, for better or for worse. And, I used to live along one of the green belts in Davis and certainly saw many more people out and about on their bikes or using the lanes not the bike lanes, but the bike paths on the green belts for walking quite a bit more, which was nice to see.
Right, very cool, wonderful work. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Anybody else will keep it rolling if so, or
Can I just ask one quick question?
yeah, Barbara, go ahead.
Do you have any conflicts between street trees and bike lanes?
No, most of the street trees are on planting strips that are adjacent to the sidewalks, and so there isn't a whole lot of interaction between the street trees and the bicycle lanes, at least that I'm aware of at this time.
In Richmond, we've just begun a series of bike lanes along established streets, and there's a lot of street tree problem with tree limbs falling into the bike lanes and homeowners not feeling responsible to clean it up. Because
that might be a problem.
So, anyway, sorry, I just wondered if it was a Richmond problem or if it was a national issue. So, all right,
sure.
Thank you. It was very nice.
Michael?
Generally speaking, when putting forward a nomination of any kind where you're the first, right? Particularly when going to the state and federal level, you have to do so much, to come back to previous discussions, context discussion, right? To what degree is, you mentioned Florida, for example, as having a role, right? To what degree is the local documentation led you to do more of the development of the contemporary bike lane discussion? That's one question. The other question is, to what degree does the Huffman Company, I had a Huffy bicycle, you know, the reality is to what degree does the company, which is based in Dayton, but began in Watertown, New York, right? To what degree does the company support the efforts? Because from what I can tell, the Huffman Company is a major real estate force.
Yeah, at least from what I know about that video that I showed, that was presented to a number of city governments across the country, and sort of in support of why bicycle lanes were such a good thing. And Davis was featured very prominently in that video, as well as other cities, which obviously
there were other cities as well.
Correct. Yeah. So like after they talk about Davis, then they start talking about some bike paths that were in Chicago and a couple of other cities as well. But and then can you remind me what your first question was again?
Well, the question of the Huffy or Huffman Company, does it have any role today in supporting the initiatives for the biking community?
Frankly, I'm not sure. But the other people on the subcommittee that are continuing to work on the National Register nomination might have a better sense.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, that's okay, and we can end a little early and then come back at 1 for our next presentation at the top of the hour. Thanks again, Michelle. That was really great. All right, so I think that's what we'll do. We will have a little extended bathroom coffee break and reconvene at the top of the next hour for Jenny Rowan's presentation.